Hi, this is Group 2 of Construction Economics and Financial Analysis subject, and our project topic is Financial Statements and Ratio Analysis of Hindustan Construction Company Limited. And my group members are Adira Thambi, Muhammad Faiz, Naveen George, Nimesh Gopakumar, and myself, Anita Jacob. So let's look at an overview for Hindustan Construction Company. HCC is a public-private company headquartered in Mumbai, India, whose business span the sectors of engineering and construction, real estate, infrastructure, urban development, and management. The HCC group of companies comprises HCC Limited and its subsidiaries HCC Real Estate Limited, HCC Infrastructure Co. Limited, and Lavasa Corporation Limited, Steiner AG in Switzerland, and Haiba Technologies Limited. And it is founded by industrialist Seth Walchand Hirachand in 1926. HCC Limited executes large-scale civil engineering and infrastructure projects such as hydel power plants, nuclear power plants, expressways and highways, tunnels and bridges. HCC currently serves the infrastructure sectors of transportation, power and water. And HCC was the first construction company in India to be certified for ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and OHSAS 18001 for its quality, environmental, and occupational health and safety management systems. And currently, the company is headed by Ajit Gulabchand, which is the chairman and managing director of Hindustan Construction Company. And HCC is also a developing Lavasa, a planned hill city set in the Sahyadri Mountains. Lavasa is spread amidst 23,000 acres and located at a 3-hour drive from Mumbai and an hour's drive from Pune. The master plan for Lavasa has been developed by the design consultant HOK International Limited USA. And Lavasa is slated to have 5 towns, that means Desp, Mugan, Thamana Hall, Sakari Wadavali, and the Central Business District CBD. And the city is planned for a permanent population of 3 lakh residents. The integrated development at Lavasa city comprises apartments, retail, hotels, an international convention center, education, information technology, biotech parks, sports and recreation facilities, which is spread across its 5 towns. And our project will include the following. That means the study of activity ratios of HCC and the liquidity ratio of the company, as well as the solvency ratios, the profitability ratios of HCC. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. And good morning to all. My name is Adira Thambi, and I'm here to discuss the different ratios that we are calculated. The first one is activity ratio. In activity ratio, there are different classifications like inventory turnover ratio, days of inventories on hand, receivable turnover, days of sales outstanding, payable turnover, number of days of payable, working capital turnover, fixed asset turnover, total asset turnover, and working capital. Based on the financial data of 2019 and 20, the values that we got or calculated is tabulated here. These are the summaries of the data that we are analyzed. First one is in an inventory turnover ratio. Actually, inventory turnover ratio indicates how many times a company takes to sort or replace its inventory in a given period. For a period of 365 days, the HTC company has taken 20.8 times 8 times to restock its inventory. And the days of inventories on hand in HTC is 17.6. That means 365 by this inventory turnover ratio is used to calculate the days of inventories on hand. Next is the receivable turnover ratio. This receivable turnover ratio is used to assess how successfully a firm manages its credits that is offered to the consumers, or how they are fastly recovering that debt or they are paying their debt. And if a company is good in collecting its debt, that company will prosper definitely. Otherwise, this company financial background will decreases. So for HTC, it took 38.4 days to collect to recover its debt. That means the financial status of the company is decreasing. And next is the payable turnover. The payable turnover is shows how efficiently is company repaying its debt to the suppliers or the short-term loans that they take. And if the payable turnover of a company is much lower, it indicates that they repay its loan very fastly. And if it is very high, if the payable turnover is very high, it indicates that they are repaying it very fast. The payable turnover of HTC is 14.5, and but if HTC took a long period with a high payable turnover ratio. This high turnover ratio with long period indicate that they are not investing back to their business. They are only concentrating on repaying its loan. So if it is continuous, it will decrease the growth rate of the company, and the earnings or profit of the company will decreases. And another ratio is the working capital ratio. That is actually it's a link between the cash required to finance a company's operation and the revenues a firm earn to continue its operation, or how they are using the revenue for its daily operation and how they're making it profit from that. And if a company is investing too much in its accounts receivable and inventory to sustain its sale, it's very good. And if the ratio is below 1, it will lead to a bad debt or outdated inventory. And for HTC, the value is 0.73, and it indicates that the company is not efficient in managing their debt or managing their fixed asset and it is not using it efficiently. So next is the liquidity ratio that will be discussed by my teammate Naveen. Thank you so much.
Hi friends, good morning. I'm Naveen George. I'm here to present the liquidity ratio of the HCL Construction Company. Liquidity ratio is calculated by combining an institution's success in managing short-term or one-year accounting with existing or acquired ratios. When it comes to current ratio, a current ratio is a number that represents or compares an institution's current assets and liabilities. The equation for current ratio is current ratio equal to current assets divided by current liabilities. In 2020, for HCL Constructions, the current assets are 5,021.34 crore and the current liabilities is 7,129.32 crore. Therefore, by calculating the current ratio is 0.704. Then when it comes to the quick ratio is a measurement of a company's capacity to fulfill short-term obligations using its most liquid resources, and it provides insight into its current liquidity situation. The formula for quick ratio is equal to cash plus short-term investment plus receivable all divided by current liabilities. For HCL Constructions in 2020, the cash equivalents are 85.92 crore, the short-term investment is 6.94 crore, and the receivables are 2,719.72 crore, and the current liabilities is 7,129.32 crore. Therefore, the quick ratio is 0.394. Then the cash ratio. The definition for cash ratio is, it is a measure of an organization liquidity, and it is the ratio of all its liquidity and their cash counterparts to the company's existing liabilities. The equation for cash ratio is equal to cash plus short-term investment all divided by current liabilities. In the HCL Construction Company, in 2020, the cash equivalents are 85.92 crore. The short-term investment is 6.94 crore, and the current liabilities is 7,129.32 crore. Therefore, the cash ratio is 0.013. When it comes to the defensive interval ratio, it is also known as defensive interval period or basic defensive interval, which is a monetary metric that determines how long a company can operate without using their non-current resources, long-term resources, whose full value cannot be acquired during the current accounting year or outside financial capital. Defensive interval ratio equal to cash plus receivable all divided by average daily expenses. For HCL Construction Company, in 2020, the cash equivalents are 85.92 crore. The receivables are 2,719.72 crore, and the average daily expense is 11.21 crore. Therefore, the defensive interval ratio is 250.28. That's all. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Nimesh Gopakumar and I'm going to take solvency ratio for my presentation. By the way, thank you Naveen for explaining liquidity ratio. So solvency ratio is a significant indicator used by potential business lenders to access an organization's capacity to pay long-term debts obligations. And it can also be used as a measure of a company's financial health and which also determines the cash flow if it's sufficient to satisfy its long-term commitments. So under solvency ratio, there's debt ratio. The debt to asset ratio compares the overall debt of a firm to its total assets, and it calculates a firm's leverage and shows how much the company is supported by the debt versus assets. So moving on to the next slide. So debt to asset ratio in the case of Hindustan Construction Company, it's like total debt divided by total assets. That's equal to 0.65. The ratio of the company is like below 1. So therefore it has not much difficulty in meeting its obligations. And next is debt to capital ratio. So that's total debt divided by total debt plus equity. So that's for HCC, it's 0.86, which is lower than 1. So it has more debt relative to its equity. So moving on to the next slide. And debt to equity ratio is total debt divided by total equity, which in this case is 6.04. It is similar to the above ratios, but the higher the ratio, the more debt business has on its books, and the greater the risk of default. So the financial leverage ratio of the company is like average assets divided by average equity. So that comes to around 9.27. And next is the coverage ratio, which determines how many times a company available profit can cover its existing interest payments. So it also calculates the company's margin of safety for paying interest on its debts over a particular time period. And if the ratio goes below 1.5, it may signal that a firm may have trouble paying interest on its debts. So interest coverage is equal to EBIT divided by interest coverage, and that's for HCC it's 6.5. And next is the fixed charge coverage, which is EBIT plus lease payments divided by interest payments plus lease payments. So that's 6.2 in the case of HCC. So that's all about my part, and the next part is profitability ratio, which will be taken by Mohammed Faiz. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Nimesh. And myself, Mohammed Faiz, and I'm going to talk about the profitability ratio. The profitability ratio are the method or tool used to evaluate the company's capacity to create earnings over time concerning its revenue, operational costs, balance sheet, assets, or shareholders' equity, utilizing data from a given moment in time. The profitability ratio helps to calculate how efficiently a company generates profit and value for the stakeholders. These are the data we have from the project one. So these are the data we use to calculate the different profitability ratios. The revenue in 2020 and 2019 years correspondingly, and gross profit, operating income, EBT, the earning before tax, but after interest, net income, average total asset, average total equity. And this is the different ratios we have calculated, and the equations are given in the table column 2. First one is gross profit margin, and the equation is gross profit by revenue. And in the corresponding 2020 and 2019, we have calculated the values. And then is operating profit margin. The equation is operating income by revenue, and pre-tax margin. The equation is EBT divided by revenue, and net profit margin. The equation is net income divided by revenue. And return on asset, the equation is net income divided by average total asset, and return on equity, net income divided by average total equity. The first one is the gross profit margin. The gross profit margin ratio is commonly known as gross margin, is the gross profit margin ratio to sales. After paying the cost of goods sold, a company gross margin is the profit it makes. The larger a company's profit margin, the more efficient it is. And here the value we got are 0.134 and 0.103 in the year 2020 and 2019 respectively, which indicates that the company is making good sales. And operating profit margin. After paying for variable expense of production, such as salaries, raw materials, and so on, the operating profit margin ratio shows how much profit a firm earns. It demonstrates how well a firm manages the expenditure and expenses that comes with running a business. In the case, in our company, the company makes 0.126% and 0.127% profit before interest and tax in 2020 and 2019 respectively. Next one is pre-tax margin. It is a financial accounting metrics used to assess a company's operational performance. It's a ratio that shows us what proportion of sale have turned into earning, or how many cents of profit the company has produced for each dollars of sale before taxes. Here in the case of Hindustan company, the ratio is low, which is 0.099% and 0.0291%, which indicates poorer operational profitability. Which in turn indicates that the company profitability is increasingly reliant on low tax environment. The next one is net profit margin. The net profit margin is the amount of net income and as percentage of total revenue. Investors can use the net profit margin to see if a company management is making enough money from its sale and if operation and overhead costs are under control. Here it is clear from the table that the profit decreases from 2019 to 2020. The next one is return on asset. The return on asset ratio assesses a company's ability to generate profit from its assets. In other words, ROA, or return of asset, demonstrate how well a firm can turn money spent on asset into net income or gains. The Hindustan's ratio is 0.3373 and 0.44 63, which depicts every rupees Hindustan spent on asset during the year produces 33.73 and 44.63 rupees respectively. Next one is return on equity. Return on equity is the amount of profit or net income a firm generates per investment dollar, is known as return of equity or ROE. It indicates how much profit a firm makes with the money invested by its stakeholders. Return on equity is also known as return on net worth. Here, ROE remains the same for the year 2019 and 2020. And that's all for our portion. Thank you for listening us. Thank you.